Leroy, we live in Nebraska. I've lived in Nebraska all my life, and I haven't always lived in Lincoln. You know, I used to live out west. It's a little bit different out there in terms of people's opinions about things. And before I came to college here in Lincoln and learned about these issues myself, I heard people speaking very negatively about affirmative action, saying some of the kinds of things that that this group is putting forward. What do you think is the basis for the comment that qualified white people don't get jobs because of affirmative action?
I think anytime progress begins to move forward, there'll be some who will try to impede progress. But one of the ways of doing that, going way, way, way back, and I'm not comparing what we're doing now to the Klan, but the Klan rose to success by putting fear in people. That's a very strict, strong comparison I'm making. But here, modern day fear, putting fear in people's lives that you're going to lose your job, or you're not going to have a job. And if you have affirmative action, that's the greatest fear, that person will lose their jobs. As we look back in the history of Nebraska, which you mentioned, I was reading the paper this morning, and the Homestead Act passed in Nebraska, Homestead Act passed in 1862. Nebraska became a state in 1867. It was not until 42 years later that the first black man homesteaded in Nebraska, and it was out at Cherry County, Nebraska in 1904. So 42 years later, a whole generation passed before a black man could own land in Nebraska, according to today's paper, this morning paper, January 20th. That's a 40-year head start. And we look at all the privileges and opportunities that afforded us in Nebraska. And yet, if you sat back and began a race and you gave somebody a 42-year head start, how long would it take for one to catch up? So affirmative action is not trying to put people above other persons by selecting less qualified or giving something they haven't earned. It's simply giving something that white America has always had, certainly in this country, since the 1904.
Leroy, on a personal level, how does it make you feel that we're sitting here in 2008 defending affirmative action?
One, Judge, that's a very good question. One, it tells me the level of persons, I don't want to say intelligence, but for lack of a better word, understanding of the issues. That's the more proper word to use, understanding of the issues. We fail to see the contribution that women and minorities make to this community. And as I look at the contribution that women athletics have made here through our women's volleyball program, basketball program, and I'm just talking about the University of Nebraska, not to include our other colleges here, they have made great strides. When I came to Nebraska in 1970, I lived in Auburn, Nebraska, and there was not a women's basketball program there at that time. And we see the contributions that women have made economically as we think about basketball and the sports at Nebraska. And yet, if it had not been for affirmative action, specifically Title IX, would we have those programs today? As we look at the monies and so forth that those programs bring into Nebraska, my son was on the 95 bowl games, Orange Bowl games, championship games in Nebraska. And I was talking to the AD athletic director at that time. He said that particular championship brought $90 million to the state of Nebraska. And that's 10 years ago. I don't know what it would mean in today's dollars. So I look at the championships that Nebraska women's sports have brought here through the volleyball program, the success in the basketball program, the success in the baseball program, softball programs. And so there's a lack of knowledge of just how much minorities and women contribute to this country. We don't talk about that a lot. So I think the fear and the unknown and the value that people bring to the community is what lacks understanding. If we're not for affirmative action, those would not be.
Patte, I can't help but notice that you're a woman, and that you're a woman who's been in leadership roles in our community, and you know, you've been a great role model, I think, for anybody who wants to be a citizen in a democratic society. As a female, how does it make you feel that we're sitting here talking about affirmative action?
Well, we can see Omaha has no women on the city council. We have 1 out of 7 on the city council here in Lincoln, and we know that women are underrepresented in political positions. So is that opportunity or what? I think we need to urge more people to run for office, but I believe that economically a lot of women cannot do it. And We see other figures that women can't get small business loans as easily as white males can. So I don't think that the system is working. As Leroy says, if we're 40-some years behind, this isn't the time to be talking about doing away with any sort of affirmative action program.
Now, Patte, if you and I had the same job in the same city, I know you have some statistics with you. It's my understanding that I would still make more money for the same work.
Absolutely, and Nebraska is woefully behind in a lot of things, and I can give you some rankings, national rankings, that Nebraska is third in the percentage of women in the workforce in the United States, but we only rank 45th for median annual earnings for women. That's at $26,000. We rank 49th in the nation for women in managerial and professional occupations, and we're ranked 23rd in the nation for the percentage of women with 4 or more years college. So women are educated here, and they're in the workforce, but they are at the bottom of the heap when it comes to annual earnings. Something's wrong with that picture.
So in other words, Nebraska is a place that we might need affirmative action more than many other places.
I believe that would be true.
Leroy, in practical terms, I hear affirmative action. You know, I'm an affirmative action, equal opportunity employer. These words are at the bottom of, I think, every application I've ever filled out for a job. I haven't heard of a lot of challenges on the basis that there's racism, you know, in Nebraska, saying, well, you didn't hire this person because they're black, or legal challenges. So can you give me, is affirmative action more of an attitude that is put forward by the law, or is it something that is pretty litigated, you know, meaning, I mean, do you see what I'm getting at? Is it the importance of the attitude and the approach that an employer might take in hiring that affirmative action encompasses, or is it more, you know, a legal piece, in your opinion?
Well, I think in simplistic terms, affirmative action is simply hiring a person based upon their qualifications, not preferential treatment, as Patte has said, based on their abilities and skills. And as we look at persons, all things being equal, you take the tests are the same, you take the personalities, and more things goes into hiring than just the test. You can have some personalities and things that go along with that. You look at this candidate and you say, okay, all things are equal, I have a numerical objective, I want to balance the workforce, and you could hire a minority, a woman in this case. As you look at civil rights, that says that I will not discriminate based on persons on their race, religion, creed, sex, age, or national origin. And sometimes they get confused that they have different meanings in the workplace. And as we look at civil rights and affirmative action, both are needed in my opinion. Just so happen right now that Connolly and others in the state are looking at affirmative action and challenging why it's necessary to have affirmative action. And affirmative action is simply putting underrepresented numbers of qualified persons in the workplace, and the opportunities arise, we're going to make that correction.